do it, and I gladly do it because I am passionate about the environment.
It's in the setup process, so it's missing the bridge, and none of this is glued in.
So just like having colors and things, and I don't want to necessarily keep making the same thing.
How about you not focus on the screws and go play the damn thing for 15 minutes?
So the next thing that came out after that was the Omega, which was 51, because why not build a 51 amplifier? And that
to the finish, and ultimately, in the course of my career, that was really good because fit and finish was always really easy for me.
From Cowbrand Designs out in...
I'm in Missouri, Florissant, Missouri.
Nice. We're all over now. He makes the most wild electric parlor guitars you've ever seen. It's completely unique. You're not going to see it anywhere else, and that's kind of why we got him on the show. So, Steve, take it from here.
Most people just guitars, but they're different. They're parlor.
They're different, yeah. They're different.
Yeah. Kind of a strange road getting here. Actually, I've been dealing with guitars a long time, really. I started it when I was in high school. I went to a technical high school, and I was initially going to study airframe and power mechanics. I wanted to be an aviation mechanic, and unfortunately, the seats were tight, so I couldn't get in the program that I wanted, but they asked me to stick around and go into small engine, which is motorcycles, marine engines, and even Volkswagens, things like that. Yeah. And lawn equipment too, of course. So I stuck around, and I was waiting on another seat to open up in this program because they were sure one was going to open. Never happened, so I wound up a motorcycle mechanic, and while I was going to high school, I got a job in a music store. Now, that's kind of a funny story, too. This is kind of weird. But I was working in a hobby shop, and I was there quite a bit. I was there, I guess about 5 years. And the owner of the hobby shop passed away while I was in high school. And I thought that was the end of that. And I got a call from somebody that said he knew the owner of the hobby shop very well and spoke highly of me and my ability to learn and adapt and do things. And I was like, I don't know anything about instruments. So I took the job anyway, and that's where I discovered the guitar. And the thing that I liked most about this shop, the music store I worked in, it was right on the edge of a community that was steeped in kind of blues music, and then just this, I'll just put it plainly, the city and the county, if you will. And we got a lot of inner city Baptist church, mostly Baptist churches would bring in these K's and harmonies that they use. They were storefront churches, this, that, and the other. They always brought them in for work, and anytime they could trade one in. And most of the time they wanted to trade it in, they usually traded it in on something kind of inexpensive. It was like a Hondo or something like that looked like a Les Paul or that. But they would trade in these K's and harmonies, and I fell in love with them. Yeah. And everyone that came to the store that got traded in, I bought up right away. So I wound up with a basement full of them. I started messing with them. I fell in love with the Harmony pickup, which is the Row Industries pickup, the Golden Tone pickup. And so I just started fixing these guitars up, not changing them, not pulling pickups off, but just fixing them up and making them play. And the sound was just incredible. And at that time, another thing that happened in this store was we got a lot of blues musicians that came through there, the older ones. People like Henry Townsend, well-known Henry Townsend, James DeShay, a lot of St. Louis legends, and Tommy Bankhead, and I wound up working on a lot of their equipment. And eventually that became the type of instrument that I liked. But the one thing that eluded me was this K. Jimmy Reed Thin Twin. I'm sure you guys are familiar with that guitar. Yeah. And I never saw one. Nobody ever brought one in, but I saw one in a magazine one day, and I took it around to some of the more well-established vintage stores, which we weren't. We catered to whoever needed, we showed sheet music, all kinds of stuff. But there were 2 or 3 vintage stores that only dealt in that type of thing, and at that time, I knew nothing about it. So I just started going around to those stores, and I got the same response over and over again. Every time I showed this magazine, do you have one of these? I'd like to buy one. And they all looked at me and said, we don't sell junk. That's what I always got. We don't sell junk. We don't mess with it. And it's funny today because everybody loves those instruments now. Yeah. But I've always loved them. So I was kind of, from that point on a mission with these guitars. So every time I found one, I took trips to Chicago. I bought them in pawn shops and just wherever I could find them. I just completely love these instruments. I love the scale length of them. And not just electrics, the parlor acoustics like your old Oscar Schmidts and that. Yep. And from there, I just kind of it kept fixing these things up, trying to get other people to actually use them. You couldn't find people that would use them live, which is weird. But, you know, you got to say, this is like in the 80s and 90s. Anyway, I just kept working on these things. Eventually, I got an opportunity to apprentice at Nilling Violin. So I worked over there for a minute in St. Louis Music Supply. I had a company called Nilling Violin. And I just kind of got my chops for, I'd say, luthiery from there. But it was only violins, cellos, violas, things like that. You know, the more orchestra type instruments. So, kind of from there, I discovered a book on archtop building, so I learned to build archtops. Did that for quite a while, and taught that even for a minute. But still in love with these K's and harmonies. So eventually, I opened up a small shop. I met one of my favorite people in the whole world. Still today, we're very good friends. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but his name is Alvin Youngblood Hart.
Oh, I've never heard of him.
You familiar with him? You guys should check him out. He's an incredible string master. He's got a couple of records out on Sony and some smaller labels, but he's an incredible player. And he uses a lot of that equipment. And I attended one of his shows and got lucky enough to talk to his wife, who introduced me to him. So between me and him, we always talk these crazy instruments. So I just got the idea that I wanted to make something similar, but more sturdy and with more, you know, substantial woods, and that led to designing my pickups and using the scale length and designing my own bridge. Now, the other thing that kind of turned me off is everything that was being built on a Telecaster, Stratocaster, Les Paul platform. And that just put me in a position where I'm just competing with a gazillion other people. Mm-hmm. So, thing to do. The other part of that is the woods. People have this misconception that the only woods that sound good are the woods that look good. In other words, you know, heavily figured maples and all this other stuff. And I don't have anything against those, but not for me. I've discovered some of the most wonderful sounding instruments are made out of poplar, swamp ash, alder, basswood, you know, and it's what I wanted to build with. So that's kind of what separated me from everybody else. And I just started using it. I wasn't sure if people would be adaptive to it. So the mission was to make something that felt proper, balanced proper, and was substantial enough that you could take it on the stage night after night and not have to worry about something going wrong with it. Yeah. The scale length, I call it parlor, but let's face it, one of my favorite upscale instruments is the Gibson Birdland, which is a 23.5-inch scale length, which is what mine's built on. Yeah. Yep. And I just kind of, that's kind of what my strange instrument is. It's kind of an amalgamation of all these different things. But, you know, people look at it and go, what are those pickups? Where did they come from? Or even what is that bridge? Where did that come from? Well, it's all me. I don't want to associate myself with anybody else. I don't want to have a body that looks like it came from a Telecaster, a Stratocaster, or a Les Paul, or whatever. And then, and then on top of that have like a P90 in it or a humbucker or whatever. You know, because people kind of look at these days, they look at the hardware. They don't care what the body looks like because there's so many people building. Mm-hmm. They just look at the hardware and say, oh, okay, that's a cool looking guitar. That's a Telecaster, right? And I'm like, it doesn't look like a Telecaster. Yeah, but look at that bridge and those pickups and everything. Yeah. So, you know, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't have anything against it, but I want my own deal, and I want to show that there's a gazillion other sounds out there that have yet to be embraced. I won't say discovered, I'll just say embraced. Sure. And I'm just... That's awesome. Guys. And the other thing is, you know, I think flat wounds get a real bad rap, and I use flat wounds, but I don't use the old cable like some of the guys that I used to hang out with, the old blues guys. You know, those you know, they talk about black diamonds being cable, you know, really heavy. Well, I encourage people, like when I finish an instrument for somebody, I encourage them to allow me to put a sort of tomastic infield, the jazz swings on there. Once they flat ones, I don't want anything to do with it. As soon as they get it, they hit me back. Man, you are right. These are incredible strings. You get a lot more warmth out of them. They don't feel, they don't feel like cable or it's not just a jazz string or whatever. Great bell tones to go with my pickups, and my pickups are designed around that.
Yeah.
And there's like crazy stories when it comes to even like the designing of the hardware and the pickups that I put on my guitars. So there's like I could talk for days about this. There's so many different angles. I guess I should say I'm 57 years old, and I've been working on guitar since I was 17. I got my Gibson certification, I think hold on, I'll tell you. I got my Gibson certification in '93. So it's not the only one I got, but it's the first one I got that I was like really proud of. They literally came to St. Louis and, tested me and did all this stuff. I'm like, wow, I passed. So, and I don't know if they even do that these days. I think they just send out a certificate. Yeah. But, I've been doing this a long time. And I've been through a lot of different phases. I've built heavy metal guitars. I even built the bass. My most proudest moment is building the bass for Stanley Clarke. Wow. And, yeah. And, I've done stuff for a few other people, but, I just kind of want to hang with this thing. I'm a huge blues fan. I play fingerstyle. I play regular, electric style, but my love is fingerstyle. Yeah. So I just kind of blended some things together. You notice the slotted headstock and the scale length. But, I wanted to have some more contemporary things so that different people would be attracted to it, not just these group of people say, oh, it's just it's a cave thing. Well, I'm not quite into that. I want to give it a try. Mm-hmm. Sure. So, I just kind of blended a bunch of things into it. And I don't use nitrocellulose lacquer. Mm-hmm. Pretty much everything that I use on my instrument, I try to make sure it's as sustainable as possible. I use water-based finishes, mm-hmm. and the process is longer, but it does yield a beautiful look. And I've had a few others, when I was first trying to get into it, the other losers say, oh, yeah, it's great, but, you can't quite get that look or it shrinks. Well, I've conquered all of that. It's just a matter of sticking with something long enough and being determined to get to that point.
Yeah, for sure. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So, if you don't mind, so you touched on a lot of the stuff that I was planning on asking about anyway, which is fantastic.
Awesome interview.
Let's talk about your pickup for a second. So where did that come from, and what were you trying to accomplish in designing and winding your own pickup for your own guitars?
Well, the first thing is I'm a huge single coil fan. I love single coils. Every once in a while, I do humbuckers, but I love single coils. But the single coils that I like are not necessarily the ones that most people are going to identify with. I'm not, I'm not locked into Strat or or even a P90. I like some of the old Gretsch ones that were made by D. Orman, but honestly, the one that really attracts me is basically the golden. It's called the golden tone. I know a lot of people just call them gold foils. Anything with foil on it, gold foil. No, the one that I like is made by Rowe Industries, which is D. Orman, and it has gold foil in it. It's the one that you see on the Rockets and the Stratatones and all of that. That's the one that I like. And that's the one I started out winding. When I first started winding, I was recuperating those and slightly overwinding them so that they would match well with Telecaster pickup. Some people want to put them in the neck position, so I would have to wind them just slightly hotter, just to get so when you flip from the neck to the bridge, it wasn't this huge volume change. So I would wind them slightly. What I never liked was the ceramic magnet. So that's the first thing I changed. And I went to an Alnico. And also wanted it just a little bit warmer. And that's kind of hard to do with the geometry, because one of the magic things about pickups that nobody ever talks about is geometry. How many winds is a huge, you got to deal with that. And also what type of magnet, yes. But how tall it is or how wide it is also makes a huge difference. Also, the aperture. In other words, how much of the string that the part that picks up that vibration is, that movement. And if it's a wide magnet, it's going to be a little bit more bass heavy than if it's a real narrow magnet, regardless of how much you turn it. So you could have a really bright, piercing treble sound, or you could have a really warm but still loud, bassy bass sound. And just finding those things. So what I did was I just kind of explored the geometry. Mine is slightly taller than a D-Armin. Don't let the shape fool you. It's standard shape up under the cover. Yeah. But it's wider. It's wider. I don't use the same magnet in the bridge as I do in the neck. The bridge uses very, very small pole piece Alnico 5s, and then the neck uses an Alnico 2, and it's a blade. People like to call anything with a blade a Charlie Christian. This is not a Charlie Christian at all. It's wound pretty much still like a D-Armin. Another thing I'm a huge fan of, as a kid working in a hobby shop, the first thing most people who deal with hobbies, building models, is fabrication. So the minute the 3D printer burst on the scene, I was like, now I can do what I want to do.
Yeah,
so I got a 3D printer, and that's when I was able to design the type of flat work that I wanted. Because what I wanted to do, you couldn't just use with vulcanized fiberboard, which is what most pickups are made with. Just the top flat work and the bottom flat work, and then this magnet between the two giving you this bobbin. I didn't want to do anything like that. The funny thing about my bridge pickup, which I felt was more important, is you can change magnets and never go near the wire. The magnet is modular on the bridge pickup. All you got to do is just take your finger and push down on it, and it slides out from the bottom, and you can change the polarity, or you can change from an Alnico 2 to a 5 or whatever, and the winding and all that, you never get near it. It's encased, but the magnet is completely separate. Doesn't harm anything, doesn't warp the flat work or anything. So the bobbin system is a snap-together bobbin system, but the other integral part is the cover. It's an aluminum cover. It's not a nickel-plated brass cover or anything like that. And as we all know, aluminum can totally change the tonal characteristics of a pickup. That was something I wanted. I got that idea from two people in order that I discovered them. First would have to obviously be Paul Bigsby, and then after that, T.K. Smith, who both are very aluminum-friendly pickup makers, and there's a reason for that. And you get these wonderful bell tones, but you can still get the top end. I've had some people say, no, you can't use it. I've had people contact me, so you can't. Well, it's already done. I used it. It's already done. It works. And later I find out they're just kind of in heavy metal framework city. That's the only, okay, I get why you think that. But you can still use it there. You'll notice that the magnet is exposed on the bridge, too, because it needs to be just a little bit brighter. On the neck, it's not exposed. It's inside, but the millwork on the covers is so thin, it doesn't make much of a difference anyway. And the flat work is not covering the tops of the magnets on the neck pickup either. So there's all these crazy mechanics and science that go into those. I got the whole Faraday's cage thing going on for the tonal qualities. And the shape, I wanted something that did not just drop into some other position. In other words, there's this idea that Marcus Miller just kind of is with. He Marcus Miller, the bass player, he says that if you want to develop a style, you have to be accepting of a limitation. Well, my limitation is these they won't drop in where Duncan came out of or Les Paul. They won't. They're their own thing. The other thing is their surface mount. They can be dropped down in a guitar, but they're designed so they'll surface mount like a D-Armin.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so they're totally different animal. And I'm okay with that. It's definitely not harmed the whole guitar idea that I have. And I honestly like to move the whole guitar, but I get so many requests for my pickups that I just, once a year I'll open it up to, it's going to sound really minuscule, to about 6 people. And the first 6 people to contact me, I take them and then I cut it off there, and then they have to wait like 4 months to get them. I wind them and get them all boxed up. I have a degree in graphic design too, so right. I kind of include that. You probably noticed with my boxing and all that. I can't, my packaging. I don't, I like to include all of that. So
yeah,
and
yeah. it's a holistic, you're putting together a whole package for them.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'd like to keep it that way. I kind of dig that. I try and like. I want people to see the very beginning and the end, and I want it to just be this step-by-step thing with no gaps in it. It's just this flow that he's got going on.
Yeah.
And, I just like to keep it that way, and it's worked out pretty good. And every once in a while, I add something new to it. You probably notice I cast my own knobs, too. And I have to do that because it's a look that I want, and for everything that I want to do, there's never anything, you can't go buy it. And honestly, if you could, I wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
I want it to be totally me. So
that was my observation, and I could be wrong in this, but you're creating a holistic package. You're creating a guitar that is not just a sum of parts, right? You're creating a guitar that is unique, where all the parts work together and is designed as one unit. So that's my observation anyway.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, I never really thought about it like that. I just flow from point A to point B, and when I look at point A and look at point B. If point B isn't flowing, I stop right there and fix that and then move to the next thing. And I have to mention, my wife is a huge part of this too. We met in design school, and we discuss everything. It's color, shape, whatever. No matter what it is, we will sit down and talk about it before we do anything.
That's awesome.
She is also a floral designer. That's really what she is by trade. She works every day in a floral design studio with 5 other people. And when she's not doing that, she's doing this. And she's heavy into resin, too. She does, a lot of resin sculpturing and casting.
Cool.
She helps with, all of my ideas when it comes to resin. And,
awesome.
Yeah. So I think that the thing that makes my guitar, I don't really see that as much as other people are really noticing it. But I think it's what makes it, those things are so different. I'm like, are they really that different? But I guess they are.
Yeah. There's a uniqueness to them for sure, but it's refreshing to see. What can people expect next from Cowbrand Designs and your guitars? What's next for you?
I've got another one coming. I've kind of exposed it a little bit, but another thing I'm heavy into is, being a child of the 60s, loving television shows from the 60s, especially the sci-fi ones. All the stuff that Irwin Allen did, like Land of the Giants, Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, The Invaders. I watched all of that stuff, and I love it all. And also, since I've discovered the guitar, I found this connection when you look at the aesthetics. So I started designing this other guitar that I said, it's time for me to do something a little, offset-ish. So I designed this other body. It's an offset, more of a surfy look. But I also like a lot of the Japanese guitars that people are starting to notice now. So I just kind of wanted to go that way with the design. I also wanted to make something that had 3 pickups in it, 3 of my pickups, and a 5-way switching system. So I just kind of slammed all that together, but I also kind of want to put it in this kind of sci-fi thing. So I'm working on that right now. That's the next thing that you're probably going to see. Oh, and there are 2 basses coming too.
Oh, cool.
There's 2, which is not something anybody's ever seen. I've done some, but not, I've never exposed any of it. So, and one of them's for the bass player I think they're on Sony, I think it is, Cavo. And I'm working on an instrument for Vernon Reed from the band Living Color.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, his will be the first one that I do that has a wireless MIDI system in it.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that. He'll actually be able to pull in effects and stuff wirelessly with this little parlor instrument. It's going to be different.
Yeah.
And, so I'm in the middle of that as well. So there's some kind of crazy stuff going on.
Pushing the limit.
One more. I've got an acoustic in the work. I've got an acoustic in the work. I did this other thing that, I don't know, you might have noticed it. It's a resonator-looking guitar. It's natural front and back, and it has green sides on it. If you go through my feed on my Instagram, you'll see it. It is kind of is a resonator, but it's got an internal acoustic soundboard. And I did that for another really cool guy that I've met. I've known him now for, I guess, about a year, but he's been really instrumental in a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now. I'll say his name. His name is Bree Pettis. There's a documentary on him on Netflix, and he was one of the 3 people that gave us the desktop 3D printer. He was the president of MakerBot, which is one of the first 3D printing companies out there, desktop 3D printing companies. And now he owns a company called Bantam Tool. They have a desktop CNC machine, which I've got one of those as well. You probably see that in some of my milling, like on my headstock badges and all of that. I use a CNC machine to do all that. And it's one of his. He's a guitar guy, too. He's a pretty cool individual when it comes to like if I got a question about something, like, man, how do I do this? But he owns that guitar, and I'm finishing up a copper kind of Stratotone kind of inspired guitar that's going to him. So, awesome. Yeah, so I got all this kind of crazy stuff going on with some really cool people.
That's fantastic. Stay in business. Yeah. All right. Should we jump into the speed round?
Yeah. Let's do it.
So jumping right into it, Tweed Deluxe or Deluxe Reverb?
Deluxe Reverb, definitely.
All right. Telly or Strat?
Ooh, I'm gonna say Strat because Telly because I own one.
All right. Looking at things a little crazy. Flying V or Explorer?
Boy. I'm gonna go V. Explorer has too many angles. I don't like two angles at all. But if I got to do V.
I gotcha. Would you go with a speed bump pickup or a P90?
Oh, speed bump. In a minute.
That's what I figured. Vox AC30 or Marshall JTM 45?
Vox. AC30 all the way.
There you go. Are you a coffee man or a tea man?
Coffee.
Good choice. So, Bixby, yes or no?
No. Are you talking about the vibrato?
Yeah. I'm talking about the vibrato, yes.
Okay, yeah, because he did some other stuff. If you talking about the vibrato, nah.
I know. All right. Do you prefer the sound of an overdrive pedal or a crank dam?
Crank dam.
Yeah. There you go. Single pickup guitars. Would you go for a Les Paul Jr. or a Fender Esquire?
Esquire.
All right. Would you call yourself a boots guy or a sneakers guy?
Definitely a sneakers guy.
All right. And last but not least, if you had to pick one, neck pickup or bridge pickup?
Ooh. Neck.
All right. There you go.
Michael, that was
Very
awesome.
good.
Thank you so much for doing this with us.
You bet. So, how does this work? Is this, you guys post these on YouTube?
And Michael, I wanted to add, I'm legitimately looking at your stuff, right? I'm very impressed, and I think you're doing something awesome and very refreshing in the guitar world. So it's awesome to see, and thank you for that.
You bet. Thank you for the interview.
All right, I'll be in touch in the next couple of days.
Okay, you bet.